Fantastic, man. Alex, how's it going?
It is going.
Jumping into it. I don't usually like rushing time. Time is the most valuable thing we have, but I'm extremely excited for August 8th. We'll be having our premier fellowship event, the Great Give Back. As of now, nearly 10 fellows, 10 different organizations, Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, Ochsner. Who else am I missing?
Yeah, yeah. I think we're up to 12 or 13 now. UPMC,
Sheesh.
Advocate Aurora, Intermountain, all good things.
Awesome. And on top of that, just phenomenal feedback thus far on the admin fellow guide. So, all inclusive, comprehensive guide available on the website. That guide is not only amazing and will get you one step closer to your fellowship, but it's your ticket into the August 8th event. So, it's four for one, three major components of the fellowship process and journey, and also get you a bonus ticket admission into the August 8th event. So we're sitting down chatting in anticipation for August 8th, and if you know us, you know that we're impatient and we're extremely passionate about giving back and about just giving away free gems and talking about this stuff. So we wanted to talk about fellowships and really break it up into three parts. So the before, which is clearly the application process and the anxiety that comes with that, the during, which is the amazing opportunity that is the fellowship, the various emotions and opportunities that are amazing, but also just as stressful and rewarding during, and then after. You can't be a fellow forever. You know, you could be a lifetime student and continue learning, but unfortunately, most fellowships are 1 to 2. And if you know a 4-year administrative fellow, please do drop a comment and let us know. But you can't be a fellow forever. So the goal is to get out of that, resident PG1, PG year 2 fellowship salary, get to a real salary and continue to move closer to your dream job. So 3 points, three categories. We're gonna touch on it and really scratch the surface for what is going to be an amazing 3-hour event on August 8th.
So before, during, and after. Before, so as we've reached out to current fellows, we want to make this August 8th live great fellowship give back 3-hour extravaganza. So live webinar, 15 plus fellows that are current in their roles. So they're brand new, went through the application process, were successful in their fellowship roles. They'll have the best, we think, sort of most timely advice. Some of them just I think all of them just started fellowships 7 days ago, on July 1, started their fellowships. And so really, really fresh and they're going to be that first round of interviewers or looking at applications and looking at that. They're going to be the ones running a lot of the process. And so to get that timely advice from them of here's what we want to see, or here's what we're thinking we want to see, and then you'll be able to immediately show it to them and get feedback and things, I think it's going to be awesome. But as I've been reaching out to them and as we've been reaching out to them, it's actually still, it's pretty heartbreaking to hear how much stress and anxiety and just the challenges that so many went through. I had someone reach out to me today and she said, hey, I've seen this online now. I've seen a couple sort of advertisements for it. A couple friends have shared, and I'd love to be a part of it. But she said, not like you use cool pictures, so I want to be a part of it. She was like, I want to be a part of this because my process. I think she described it in like 4 words with commas, and it was like grueling, terrible, confusing, and something else. And I was like, oh. And so she just said like she put herself through such a difficult time because she didn't. And I think this is true of a lot of us. A lot of us went to great programs for graduate programs, but maybe they were focused on public health or public administration, or maybe the MBA side of healthcare or thing. So a lot of programs still don't have a ton of structure or a ton of resources around fellowships, even though it's a career path that a lot of people want. And so if you're sitting in one of those programs and you don't have a lot of alumni that have done fellowships or things, like what do you, and so this was her case, is like, what do? You start just cold calling people and trying to email people and hoping that someone tells you a little bit, and you're like rewriting your personal statement, even though you've never seen anybody else's personal statement. And so getting this guide, we've put together real life examples of successful applications. And so literally Word documents of applications that got accepted to the top programs of the names of hospitals and fellowship programs that we all recognize. You literally have one of them. I was too lazy to like cross stuff out and like change things. And so you literally have the like transcripts and personal statement word for word of a couple recent successful applicants. And so just being able to say like, hey, I've seen a personal statement that I now sort of have in my mind at least one example of a statement that was successful. I think that alone would have saved me hundreds of hours of like mental stress and anguish of like, does this personal statement look good? Because I had nothing to compare it to or think about it being. So I think the before, just from a resource standpoint of, hey, we've got a couple examples of a couple years ago and of right now, examples of resumes and personal statements and cover letters and letters of recommendation that you can look at and start to pattern your application after. I think just that is worth it times however many X's you want to put in front of it. And that's just a small portion of the guide.
Seriously, thanks for that. I was, I think about the before portion, and the first assumption I'm going to make is that you're smarter than me and more in the know than I was. When I came into grad school at UCF, first and foremost, I had no idea what a fellowship is. So just by the fact that you all have heard the word fellowship, by this point, you've seen us post about it on LinkedIn or even within this video, you have the opportunity to Google administrative fellowship and be ahead of the game. So the first step of this is awareness. And the second, to Alex's point, is any opportunity you have to give yourself an edge, do so. And I think this guide does that. But more than that, I think about this interview I just saw. I don't know how recent it was, but it was Drake. And in so many words, he said that the top, right, is extremely crowded, right? And the only way to be successful or, be known as the great, or in this case, land a fellowship, is to differentiate yourself. And I think that speaks true to this fellowship process. Everybody's going to have a 3.9 and 4.0. Everybody's going to figure out how to get someone that they care about or a top name letter of recommendation. But the opportunity and what reigns true in this fellowship guide that we stress is being yourself. I think about the hundreds, as Alex mentioned, when you're a first year fellow, other duties as assigned, one of the duties is screening the candidates to come in. So the hundreds, if not, almost 1,000 applications that I've reviewed, the ones that still stick in my head today are the ones where you can clearly tell that they were telling their story and they were telling their story in alignment. So not to get too far along, but if you think about the before process, it's everything that Alex said, plus awareness, really studying up on the process and, trying your hardest to talk to fellows and get that perspective, but also not forgetting to pour into yourself and your experience and being able to tell that story, because there's no one that could be you like you.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that's what we're all about, is just if you can have an application that you yourself love, I think that's ultimately all that matters. If for whatever reason a fellowship doesn't work out, but you copy and paste the application of someone else, essentially, if you're like, hey, this is the process I'm going to follow, all my stuff needs to look exactly like this is how I want to do it, and you don't feel totally comfortable in that, and then you apply and don't get it, I think that's the crushing feeling, is like, I didn't put myself out there for them to make a decision on me. It was like, I put what I thought they wanted to see and they made that decision, but they didn't get to see the real me. And so I think the real message is just, if you can love your application materials, and that's what we try to impart with the guide, is taking all of the resources that we didn't have, of just, here's how to think about some of this stuff. Here's how to tell some stories about yourself. I also think the unique aspect of an administrative fellowship is it's probably one of the only times in a career where there's a commitment from the organization to educate you. And so all of the other times in your career, as you go through negotiation or things, it's almost always about what you do for the organization. And so it's just, they're going to pay you X amount for you to do something, and what you get in return isn't that negotiable. But where a fellowship comes in is there's an expectation that you have a preceptor or a mentor. And so there's that component of education. So it's a little bit about what can you do for them, but also what are they going to do for you? And so I think that's what we talk about in the guide as well, is how to articulate sort of, here are the experiences that I want, and here's where I want to do them, and here's why. And being able to tell that whole story, I think, puts you so far ahead. Like you said, in the thousands of applications that we've received, I think there's some people where it just makes sense. As you read their application, it's like, okay, out of all the people, here's why this time and this place and this organization makes sense for us, and here's why it makes sense for you. And that just seems like something we should do. And so being able to tell that story in a way that the interviewer on the other side, or the person looking at your application on the other side, feels that and gets wraps their head around that story, I think that's where we want to get you.
Love it, love it. So we're going to make another assumption here as we shift gears to during, right? So we touched on before, moving to step 2, which is during your fellowship. We're going to make the assumption that you got the guide and that you have landed a fellowship, right? So in full transparency, we've had about 32 individuals purchase the guide. Our goal as an organization and personally is that the 32 people that have purchased the guide and that plan to attend the August 8th event land a fellowship, and we're all in on that. Our goal is to get at least 100. So hopefully if you're watching this, you'll be number 33, 34, and so on to 100, so that we have 100 individuals that get the guide that attend the event, and have 100 individuals that land fellowships across the country. So another assumption, but you're here. So during the fellowship, thought about this, and this is off the cuff. The first thing that comes to mind again is a quote, and it's make the money, don't let the money make you. And again, just replace money with fellowship. Make the fellowship, don't let the fellowship make you. Chances are you're going to be starting a fellowship that has been doing it for at least a year, maybe a new track, but the organization has been around, right? So they're going to have standard, you're going to have a preceptor, you're going to have some kind of rotation, you're going to have some kind of schedule and agenda. And I think that gives us the structure that we need as humans. But really, 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 again, self-reflect and try to land in opportunities that give you an opportunity to learn, but also fulfill and feed your fuel. Because it's easy, I swear, 2 years goes by quick, to look back, and as we get to this last section of after, and say, man, like, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have spent more time in this department. So in all seriousness, stay within the structure, but take time to pour into yourself as you think about during.
We're giving away the guide in word form here, but one of the parts of the guide about going into the fellowship, so once you've used the guide resources to get the fellowship, one of the things that we suggest is writing that list. So while you're going, we talk about sort of that push and pull of, there's probably some things during your graduate programs before the fellowships that you're pushed into. And so maybe it's like that finance class, you're like, I don't want to learn finance, or I don't want to do this. And you get sort of pushed into that. And then there's some things that may pull you. And so maybe it's health policy or whatever. You find yourself sitting there late at night, Googling health policy and what it means and what's going to change, and debating with your friends. And so it's something you're pulled into. And so in the fellowship realm, if you can write down sort of during grad school, you usually land the fellowship in October, November, and then you have all the way till the next July till you start it. If you can write down those experiences that you want to have, even if that list changes dramatically, but if you have, on day one of my fellowship, because I had that advice from someone else, I went in with, I think it was written down on pencil and paper. I wasn't in the cool iPad crew yet. And so it was like a pencil and paper list that I pulled out, but it was like, hey, I've heard all about how health systems lobby, or how there's government affairs organizations within health systems. And I get that there's public and private partnership, but I don't really get that. And I've never seen sort of a person who works for the government, but for this organization, or how that would even work. And so I had this list of like, I want to see fundraising. I don't understand how millions of dollars pours into these organizations in charitable contributions and where it goes and who's getting it. I want to see government operations. I want to see cancer research. I had this list of like, here's a bunch of things. And like you said, making the fellowship and not letting it make you. I was fortunate to be able to articulate that early on, to say, here's a couple things I want to experience. And I don't think I checked off all of the list, but I hit a significant portion of it. And it really changed the sort of outcome for after, because I was able to say, okay, I thought I might be interested in this, and ooh, I really hate this. Or okay, I thought I might be interested in this, and all right, maybe this is an avenue that makes sense, and it's something I can make an impact in. And so I think the guide from before and during. The other thing that I'd say real quick about during that I know you'll have comments on is just, I think everybody, because the before process is so stressful, everybody thinks like you get the fellowship and you're sort of done. It's like, I got this really competitive fellowship and like everything's going to be good from now on. And people don't fully realize that on the outside, there's just a ton of fellows who get a fellowship, or start to go through it and don't like it, or wish they had done something different, wish they were in a different job, wish they would have been in a whole different organization, whatever it is, for all sorts of reasons. And so I think managing your emotions through the fellowship experience, that maybe it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be, or maybe it's difficult to stand out because now you feel like you're competing with other fellows, all of that. There's so many dynamics that come into play that I think it's really important to have some learnings from other people that have been through the experience, especially recently, to be able to say, hey, we felt sort of overwhelmed, or we felt these experiences and emotions while we had ours too. And here's some ways to sort of navigate it.
Absolutely love that. One of the other things that no one tells you is that in the fellowship, you're going to have a ton of options, right? Which is amazing. But there's also going to be many opportunities to say yes, and just as many opportunities to say no, right? So are you going to go for the $50 million capital project that gives you an opportunity to work with the project team and a host of others, or are you going to take this interim manager opportunity over anesthesia and surgical operations to work with nurses and the head of surgery and things of that nature? And no one preps you on what the right answer is, how challenging it is to tell one executive no and another yes, or like I said, 2 years goes by quick. Is this the right decision? And all of those emotions bubbling up through this guide and through the stages of the fellowship that Alex and I really articulated, and were transparent about the feelings that you go through based on not only our experiences but conversations with others. You have a rare opportunity to experience and live out those emotions before your fellowship. And I think that in itself is special, and will again give you the edge to be able to choose the best answer. We're not going to say that it's going to be the right answer, but it's going to be the best answer for you at that time as you think about your journey during your fellowship.
Yeah, I think it's clearly what we wish we had, and clearly would have saved the like headache and stress and I think some of the stages of emotions. I think we patterned it after like 5 stages of grief and other sort of psychological steps and things that you go through. So I think some of the emotions, no matter what happens, even if you know about it, you're still going to go through it, but you might go through it faster, or you might get to a sort of better place while you're managing it. And so you're still going to have the ups and downs. You're still going to have a project that you thought was amazing, or a leader that you thought was amazing that's going to let you down, or that you're not going to enjoy, and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate some difficult conversations and things. But I think if you go into it knowing that, hey, other people have been in similar situations, other people have had similar decisions, other organizations have similarly changed or adapted in this way, and this is what I now recognize, and I also recognize how I'm responding to it. I think you have a little bit more of a roadmap to manage your emotions in a way that doesn't result in overwhelm and despair and skipping work for a day to cry in a parking lot.
Seriously. Yeah. The goal is happiness. And I think all of these things, and set up the third piece of this quick conversation, and that is the after. And the first thing that comes to mind is how adamant and serious I was personally about landing a director level role after my fellowship. I had this mindset that I've been at this great organization for 2 years working on these amazing projects, managing people. I'm not leaving this great opportunity and taking anything less than a director role, etc. Right. So I was very title hungry. I had an opportunity to live in my dream city for a great organization in a project management role. And then again, as we think about options, got a director level role for an area that I never saw myself working in. And what did I do? I took the director level role, and it ended up working out. Gave me some great experience. But I say that to say, you have an opportunity with this guide, as I mentioned, to live things out, and also to give you an edge by helping you think about what after means for you. Is that a project management role at a startup out in Silicon Valley? Is that a step up within the organization that you're in? Really challenging you to think about one, what's going to fulfill you from a career standpoint, but again, what is going to fulfill you from a purpose and happiness standpoint. And I think those are things that we take for granted as we look to climb the ladder, etc. And I won't tell Alex a story for him, but I'll tell you, we sat in every meeting in that first 2 weeks of the fellowship, and these executives look at you, and it was the three of us, myself, Alex, and one other individual, Dan. Shout out to Dan. And they ask, what are you interested in? And Dan, you can tell he spent some time within himself. So he had these great answers. This is what I'm interested in. And Dan is doing great things now. I like to think that Alex and I are doing the same, but we'll leave that up to you. Alex and I in unison, operations. Operations. We want to do operations. What the hell does operations mean? No one knows. And I'll tell you, Alex is the furthest away from hospital operations that a man or a person could be. So think about after, think about purpose, and you'll have an opportunity to think about the after through this guide and through this event on August 8th.
Yeah, I actually think it's unfortunate, the feeling that so many have of being like associating your sort of career worth in a title or even in a salary versus all of the other sort of, a lot of people will look at title and salary even outside of like responsibility or stuff they enjoy or things they're good at. And so I think it is a really hard mix. So post fellowship and pre-fellowship, even thinking about where you want to do a fellowship, there's all sorts of just real life stories and thoughts and process that goes on in everyone's lives that aren't talked about enough. And so that's part of the guide as well, that we talk about sort of, you've got to narrow down what you enjoy and what you like and what you're good at and what you want to learn, and also balance that off with where you can or want to live and how long you could or want to live there. And if you have a significant other or a spouse or kids or family obligations, if you're caring for a parent, whatever it is, people have all sorts of just real life wrapped up in the career decisions. And I don't think that part's talked about enough. And so sometimes the career decision becomes just like, here's this title and this salary, so I'm going to run with it. And we see like you said, the fellowships are usually 1 or 2 years. And so if you think about it, most people are coming from grad school, and a lot more people I think now are going straight from undergrad to grad school and then into this fellowship. And so while it feels like a long time and it feels like you've invested all this time and energy and years into this career process, the reality is you have so much longer of a career than you've obviously had to start. And so I think if you can, and we talked about it in the guide, of just making some decisions right after the fellowship that can set you up, not just for that day one after the fellowship, but for maybe 3 to 5 years down the line in the like long run of your career of what you want to be doing. Because I think we've seen it now that we're 5 or so years out of fellowships. I've seen and had the private conversations with people who have chosen those director titles or the sort of an area that they never wanted to work in. And now, so it was great while they had 1 year of experience, but now that they have 7 to 10 years of experience, whatever it is, they've now had 10 years almost of working in an area that they don't enjoy. And now that they've sort of maxed out their potential in that area, if there's not more advancement opportunities, they all of a sudden have built their career and their reputation and career capital and those type of things on areas that they don't enjoy, they don't feel that they're necessarily great at or good at. It was just like that was the best paying job right after a fellowship, so I took it. And now you see like different career trajectories take off for different people. And so I think you said you're not going to tell my story, but I had much that same mindset of I want a director position on this. And when it came down to it, I was offered a higher title and salary to stay in hospital operations than my competing offer, which was to work for the health insurance plan. And so, and really hard, the family dynamics of telling, for me, telling my wife, like, hey, I'm going to take less money and less title and responsibility from an outward appearance because, and sort of in her mind, especially articulating it, was like starting over my career. I did this 2-year fellowship in hospital operations. Now I'm going to go work for another couple of years in health insurance. And it was like, why would you do all that? You have this great opportunity to leverage that. But I knew in the long run sort of what I wanted out of my career, and I knew what I enjoyed and what I was being pulled towards versus pushed into. And so really difficult decision of here's higher salary, higher title, more responsibility, and here's a different thing altogether. But I was fortunate in that standpoint to be able to say, I'm going to choose my happiness and what I think I'm good at to most impact the world. And was really fortunate to have some great advocates on my side that I think from a happiness standpoint and from now seeing monetary and everything else that came with it, I made the right choice. And so I think that's ultimately what we're talking about from the pre, during, and post fellowship is we want you to be happy. If that means that you leave your fellowship, if it's a 2-year fellowship and you leave a year into it because there's an awesome opportunity somewhere and it makes sense for what you need for you and your family and everything, like great. If it means that you get a fellowship and for whatever reason end up not taking it and choosing a different path or going to law school or choosing like whatever, we are all about you. And I think the guide in its essence is how to get your best version of you down on paper and how to get it to come across in your stories that you'll tell in phone interviews and in-person interviews, and then how to manage the best version of you throughout all the emotions you'll experience in a fellowship program, and then how to continue doing that after the fellowship. I think ultimately that's all we want is if you're super happy and if you're in a place where you think you're making a difference in the world and contributing to the healthier future that we all want, like, let's go.
Seriously. You developing yourself makes your career happy, in turn allows you to make people around you in communities happier and also healthier. So we appreciate it. More of this to come from folks that are a lot smarter and a lot closer to this fellowship journey than ourselves. Alex mentioned it. We're now at about 12 or 13 individuals, all from different organizations. 3-hour event, August 8th. The only thing you have to do is purchase the Admin Fellow Guide at www.advancementlead.org, which is a gem in itself. In addition, gives you access to an awesome event. So we appreciate you all. We thank you all, and of course, always available